What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Guys, the first game preview of the 2024 season. This video is powered by BetUS. Guys, if you need a sports book this or during this season, look no further than BetUS. They have a new great promotion, guys. A 150 deposit bonus now, up to $2,000 on your first three deposits. But you guys have to use the promo code YouTube150. Go ahead and do that today. Get that 150% sign up bonus now, guys. But guys, we are bringing this first preview, the Colts against the Houston Texans, and we have a very special guest, representative of the Houston Texans on the AFC South Roundtable with us, 713 Houston Sports, Ruben. Ruben, how are you doing, my friend?
What's going on, gentlemen? I am excited. I feel like this is now a yearly thing now. We've done this the past 3 years, I believe. So, hey, man, let's keep the tradition going. Love you boys. Love to see you guys thriving and the channel thriving as well, bro. Now let's get a war in 3 days.
Let's do it, man. Hey, listen, I love the success that you've been having on YouTube over this last year. I mean, what were you at to start last year when we started the roundtable? When we started it back in, what was it, November of last year? How many subs were you at now? Because I'm pretty certain you're at close to 12K now. What were you at when you started that?
So I was at 5,000 subs, and I was a manager at AT&T, and I said, you know what? I'm going to bet on myself. And I had previously saved up 3 months worth of rent and bills and just grinded and ended up quitting, and a month before the draft last year, then it was CJ, then it was Will, then 6,000 subscribers later, I'm blessed to be at 12K. I'm blessed to be able to talk here about the Houston Texans. And, I couldn't be here without the big man upstairs. So shout out to him. I'm just happy to be here, obviously, with the success of this Houston Texans team. I'm going to get some of that as well. I was here during the dog days, man, when it was 7 combined wins in 3 years. Now we're, trying to get to our first ever AFC championship and our first ever Super Bowl appearance.
Freaking love to hear that, man. Freaking awesome. That kind of success, I mean, that's freaking insane, man. Congrats to you. But thank you guys again for tuning in here. We're going to hop right into it, guys. I mean, Ruben, we've seen before we get into breaking down everything here. I mean, we all know what the Houston Texans are now. I mean, we've heard about it the entire offseason. Everyone has, the addition of Stefon Diggs, the addition of Hunter, bringing in all these different guys, and some of your guys that were injured last year are back now. I mean, talk to me real quick. I mean, what is the expectation for the Houston Texans this year? I know everyone keeps saying, the AFC South is theirs for the taking, but what is the expectation amongst Texans fans about how far this team should go?
When you have a season like you did when you shocked everyone, and going into this offseason, I was saying, you're not shocking no one. Now people know exactly what you are. How are you going to build this offseason? Well, the Houston Texans were the first team in the NFL history to bring in a 1,000-yard rusher in Joe Mixon, a 1,000-yard receiver in Stefon Diggs, and a player with double-digit sacks. It was 2, though. It was Daniil Hunter with 16.5 and Danico Archie with 11+. And we haven't even mentioned Azeez Al-Shaair, our other big signing. He is our defensive captain. Now, the Houston Texans made a lot of moves in the offseason. The first time they were ever this active in the free agency period. But I think a signing that not a lot of people have been talking about is bringing back your offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. I think a lot of people forget that if we didn't give him a pay bump, he would be a head coach right now. And you can say the same thing about quarterback coach Gerard Johnson, who you brought back. He was getting interviews for offensive coordinator elsewhere. I think those two were huge. But on top of that, you look at what you have, your coaching staff, returning players. Our expectations, man, is to be one of the best teams in the AFC, get to our first ever AFC championship. To me, it's AFC or bust, because you don't even have a division win under you. And with all these weapons, with the returning players, the offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year, you have to put some expectations on you, and we're expecting to have a very, very successful season.
Well, that's awesome, man. I know, obviously the Houston Texans been doing a lot, man, and this is the big, this has been the big rivalry, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
all last year. I mean, even dating back in 2022, with the whole, Houston winning that last second, touchdown, all the debate there, and everything that's kind of gone on in between. It's
Mm-hmm.
been this history between these two teams the last couple of years. But yeah, like you said, this is like the first year I think in a long time where there are some expectations around the
Exactly.
Houston Texans, and I think the same way with the Colts in certain ways. Obviously it came down to that drop pass, or we could be, flip flop. You never know what happens with that. But when it comes to, the quarterback, I wanted to kind of talk about that because,
Mm-hmm.
CJ Stroud, obviously fantastic year last year. And, Houston obviously believed that, moving forward, he's going to be the guy and, went all in to give him all the weapons. So you mentioned already a couple of those guys
Mm-hmm.
that they brought in, but what are your impressions overall of CJ Stroud going from year one to year two? Because like you said, people know who you are now. You
Mm-hmm.
can't surprise anybody. So, and that goes for CJ Stroud too. Everybody knows he had a great season and he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league. So, what are your expectations from CJ Stroud and really from this passing offense in
Mm-hmm.
general that was very dynamic last year and obviously had some additions this year to their offense and just with another year of CJ Stroud
Mm-hmm.
being that starter?
I mean, this passing attack, it has to be one of the best in the offense you're hoping for, right? When you legit have three number one wide receivers, Nico Collins, a breakout year, 1,297 yards. Tank Dell, before he went out against Jacksonville, was on pace for 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns. Then you add Stefon Diggs, who had 1,000 yards with the Buffalo Bills, and his situation that last year, it tells a story. It was a rocky start. Now he's here. But when you have these type of three alongside of Dalton Schultz, who you brought back on a 3-year deal, plus Joe Mixon, who's not only good on the ground, but good through the air as well, I expect this to be a very dominant passing attack. And it starts with the trenches. It starts with your offensive line, who did not start one single game together last year. Laramie Tunsil, Kenyon Green, Juke Scruggs, Shaq Mason, Titus Howard. This is the first time they get to suit up and play a game together as a unit in 2 seasons. So with the passing attack, man, I expect it to be dangerous. I've seen the passing attack dangerous without an offensive line. There was a game last year with no Titus, no Laramie against TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, and CJ was sacked 0 times, and they put a 40 piece on them as well. So with the additions of all that, plus what he was doing towards the end of the year with Oni Nico, I'm expecting big things from this passing attack.
All right, Cody, I'm going to do a two-parter here with this question. But before we actually do get into that, again, guys, want to say that this episode is powered by BetUS. Again, guys, make sure you're checking out BetUS, the best sports book you can have for this NFL season. Again, take advantage of their 150% sign-up bonus now, up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. Be sure to check it out, guys. They have some of the best betting variety out there that you can ask for. And we're actually going to go ahead and do a quick little bet here with you guys. Of course, we have to take the Indianapolis Colts winning in this one because, of course, that's what we're feeling here. And I mean, I know Ruben isn't, but, it is what it is. But we are going to ask Ruben for his help here with this game here. We're going to do a little over-under action, Ruben. Cody, real quick, before we hop into Ruben's take, over-under on 48.5 for this game. I mean, again, it's week 1. Some things are incomplete and things may look a little rusty, but what do you think for a 48.5 over under?
48.5. That's pretty good. Gosh, I'm right there at it. I think I'll go slightly under just because, like you said, it's week 1. Things happen. There's going to be some sloppiness, but I do think it'll be a high scoring game, but I'm going to go slightly under.
I mean, Ruben, we saw, what was it last year? What was the score week 2? It was 31-20, was it? So, I mean, and when you talk about again, Anthony Richardson wasn't in it for most of the game. The Texans were completely slaughtered of their offensive line at that time. So there was a lot of things there. So I mean that was 51 points there just in week 2. So I mean, is it that far fetched to think that we can't go 48.5 for these two teams right here? Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So I mean, what are you thinking? If you had to be the betting man here, 48 and a half, over or under for this? All right, we're gonna take the over, and guys, we're gonna put a 20 burger on this one. You can win almost $70 on this bet, guys, if you go and take advantage of it right now. We're locking it in. Again, guys, be sure to check out Bet US today, guys. Thank you so much. But again, Ruben, so I'm gonna hop back into it
Mhm.
here. We were talking about CJ Stroud. Cody brought it up. Again, you guys need to thank every day of your lives that CJ Stroud is a quarterback for the Houston Texans. You need to thank the Carolina
I
Panthers for
do it
that.
every day, bro.
They
I do it every
botched
day.
that so bad. They botched that so bad, and Lovie Smith was fired for no reason. You ended up getting the quarterback that you guys always
Get
wanted,
them statues,
nevertheless.
man.
But I mean, how do you? I mean, it. I doubt that there's a sophomore slump with CJ
Mhm.
Stroud because the talent is there, no question. It's not like this team got worse. They obviously got better.
Mhm.
The offensive line is healthy now, and they brought in more weapons. I don't think there will be a slump. Uh, but like how much higher do you think he can actually get from it? And then when going with the Diggs question, uh, I mean, you mentioned it with the question of like how the year ended for him. Like he's
Mhm.
had a couple departures from a couple
Yes,
different teams
sir.
now.
He has.
Does it concern you at all
Mhm.
that that could potentially happen in Houston? I mean, even a little bit.
Yeah. I'll be naive not to, right? I understand what happened with Minnesota. I understand what happened with Buffalo. And right now, people are calling it the honey phase moon. I'm sorry, the honeymoon phase of having Stefon Diggs here. So far, he's been a leader in the locker room, working with guys after practice. He was voted captain 2 days ago, and it was something that he spoke about today, saying that he really wanted it, and it meant a lot that the Houston Texans named him a captain of the team. But like I said, I will be naive not to, just not have that thought in the back of my mind. Could this dude blow up on Sunday on the sideline if he doesn't get the ball thrown to him? As of right now, it doesn't sound like we are going to see that. But we haven't even started playing football. So there is a history with Stephon Diggs there. We just have to see it play out. Would it surprise me if it happened? Absolutely not. And I think this is why you kind of avoided the final 2 years of his deal to let you know, like, hey, it's only 1 year. We're all in. No BS. Let's try to get to a Lombardi. With CJ Stroud, your first part of your question, can he get better? I think he can, but not by a lot. I mean, if he has the same stats that he had this year, I would not be mad whatsoever. That means his offense was productive. That means these guys stayed healthy. This offense last year, boys, it was only the passing attack that got it going. There was no running game. You found out four games into the season that Damian Pierce was not the guy. You had only 3 100-yard rushing performances all year last season, and they were all victories, and they were from Devin Singletary. With the addition of Joe Mixon, I feel like we're finally going to see a Houston Texan offense with the threat of the pass and the threat of the ground there consistently every single Sunday, barring injury, right? Barring injury.
Right.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, so he had 1,000 yards last year with a very terrible Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. Also gave him a couple hundred yards through the air. And, that's exactly what I need here. Do I expect him to go out and get there 1,100 yards, 1,200 yards? Absolutely not. I know what type of offense that I have, and we're going to move the ball through the air. So I wonder how much volume Joe Mixon gets, but I know in that volume, he's going to be effective when he is behind this zone blocking scheme that he has shown to be effective And then I think he's going to help out this offense. I mean, it was real bad last year, guys, when it was 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9. Dameon Pierce giving you 1 yard of carry, negative 1 yard of carry, and you had to rely on a year one CJ Stroud to convert. Now with a veteran in Joe Mixon, I think he could help lead, take some of the pressure off of CJ in that terms. And he said it himself. I'm trying to prove that, even though I'm near 30, that I'm still a very good running back. I don't expect him to be a 1,200, 1,300 yard rusher, but if you barely crack 1,000 and you give me a couple hundred yards through the air, I'm happy, Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I mean, even Devin Singletary last year, I mean, Singletary didn't play practically in every game, but I mean, he did play in close to all of them and, did have over 200 carries for about 900 yards and 4 touchdowns. I would expect Joe Mixon, barring injury, to have more touchdowns, especially since they could lean on him to run more in the red zone. I think that is something that we could see. But overall, I don't really think the numbers will be much greater than what Singletary had last year, which, I mean, it's enough to be able to move it. But as far as this matchup goes, I don't know. I mean, how do you feel going up against the Colts defensive front where, you got some dogs up there in the middle. You got DeForest Buckner. You got Grover Stewart, who's probably the best one tech at stopping the run in the entire NFL. And, you got Kwity Paye on the edge, who's a very great run defender. I mean, and the linebackers of the Colts, EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin. I mean, those guys fly. Dogs. I mean, it's got to be a rough first game for Joe Mixon trying to go up against this front. No.
I mean, dude, you give me 60 yards plus, and I'm saying this is 1,000% better than what you got last year from Dameon Pierce. Because what Dameon Pierce gave you was 7 carries for 7 yards. That's it. It was that bad with DP running the football. And, around week 2, I was saying, hey, man, you got to give Devin Singletary more touches. That didn't happen. They kept on trying to show us that DP was the guy. Fortunately, now you have Joe Mixon running it. Like you said, I don't think the stats will be too much better than Devin Singletary. I wonder if Singletary plays a full 17, do we crack that, that 1K? I might say yes. But against your front 7, dude, it's legit. I like Kwity Paye, Liatu Leal. I am a fan of him. However, he's probably going against LT, man, so that's going to be a tough matchup. The interior is where I'm kind of concerned because you got DeForest Buckner, who's a dog. You got Grover Stewart, who's a dog. Our interior offensive line, Juice Scruggs, missed the first half of the season last year with a hamstring injury, and Kenyon Green missed last year. We lost him the final week of training camp. So these two guys, they're raw, and they'll be going against 2 defensive tackles. DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart, they could ruin a game plan. But if we're able to get to the second level, you then have another problem. You got Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, who both had 100-plus tackles last year on the Colts defense. Some guy who, just to put on y'all's radar, British Brooks, our undrafted running back, he's now our starting fullback, so he's going to try to, give you guys some problem. But I do think it's going to be a tough game on the ground. I think it's going to be dirty. I think we're going to grind out some yards. The main thing is can this running game be effective when you need it? Can you convert the third and shorts, the second and shorts? Can Joe Mixon give you, a pass play here and there? My focus is attacking your Colts secondary in week 1.
Sweet.
Well, yeah. And to me, Ruben, going back to just that, offensive line versus the Colts defensive line, I think one of the biggest keys in this game, it's kind of interesting because it's on the same side of the ball where it's like, the Texans' biggest strength on offense, we know, passing the football. Probably the Colts' biggest weakness is, the secondary. But on the flip side, when you look at the offensive line of the Houston Texans and the Colts' defensive line, it's kind of like, I don't know if you would agree with this, but it feels like that's maybe a big unknown or a question mark is that Houston offensive line and as a whole, while this Colts defensive line, we know what they can do stopping the run, but now they've got a guy like Liatu Latu who, you've seen the betting odds. Like he is the bet to win Rookie of the Year, and they have a lot. It's not just like front loaded either. They have other guys that can get after the quarterback as well. So I guess my biggest key with this is kind of interesting because it's like Houston. Obviously we would say has the advantage when it comes to receivers versus our corners, but I would say the Colts have the advantage on the defensive line versus the Texans offensive line. So I'm so interested to see how that works out. Like which strength, shines through the most, I suppose. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, that was one of my keys to the game is, the war in the trenches. And because this offensive line has only played one game together in 2 years, I think it might start off rough against your front four. In my video, I gave a lot of credit to your front seven. I think it might give us some problems. It was also something that our general manager, Nick Caserio, talked about on his radio show, Colts Film Room. They put it up there, and, he gave a great detail about you guys' front seven. That's my key matchup. If this offensive line can pass protect well. We know CJ Stroud can get the ball out of his hands quick. It just has to be with Bobby Slowick dials up, with Tank Dell being there, with Stefon Diggs being there. If we could get the ball out quick, man, it's going to be tough for the secondary.
All right, let's switch it over now to your
Mhm.
defensive side. And I mean, that it is going to be another battle of the strengths when it
Mhm.
comes to these two teams. Your defensive line versus our offensive line. The Indianapolis Colts offensive line finally got healthy, and we got new coaching in there,
Mhm.
and the aggressiveness and the consistency amongst the offensive line returned, and then they returned back to being a top 5 unit in the entire NFL, and they're certainly not number 5. And
Mhm.
then you look at this team that has a defensive line. I mean, they got a lot of young players, but at the same time, also got some older vets out there that have been doing it for quite a while. We mentioned Danielle Hunter and obviously Will Anderson Jr., who was definitely a great player last year, looking to try to improve. And then you got Mario Edwards in the middle, Fatukowski in the middle. I mean, you guys definitely have a strong front four. I mean, how do you see it playing out? I
Mhm.
mean, the Texans have had some games where they've taken over the Colts offensive
Mhm.
line, even when it was really starting to get good, like a few years ago. But then there's been other times where, I mean, the Texans defensive line just gets absolutely bullied. I mean, by the Colts offensive line. So how do you foresee this like strength on strength colliding here?
Look, I think it's going to be a war. I think both sides are going to win their respective matchups at points of the game. Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter are going to be probably the best edge rushing duo combo in the NFL. I am expecting 10 plus sacks from each of them. People are forgetting Danielle Hunter has 16 and a half sacks. He was one of the league leaders in tackle for loss, graded high against the run. And now opposite of him is Will Anderson Jr., who is healthy, who will be there week 1. And he says he is much more comfortable in year 2. I will say what I am interested in is my interior of the defensive line. Mario Edwards Jr., Lorenzo Fatukasi, 2 new starters. They grade highly in pass rush, not that well in terms of run blocking. So I'm sorry, run defending. So I know what you guys are going to do. It's JT. Hey, that scares me here too. That's my key to the game is stopping JT and having AR, use his arm to try to beat you. Obviously easier said than done. But with this front four, there is a lot to be excited about. You got 3 new starters, and one of them is Danielle Hunter.
Yeah, and then I mean, you mentioned Jonathan Taylor, so we can just kind of jump right into that. Like, Jonathan Taylor, we saw what he's done, last year against the Houston Texans in the final game, nearly 200 yards rushing the football, and he's just traditionally had some really good
Yep.
games against the Houston Texans. And then you throw in the factor of, when the Indianapolis Colts and Houston Texans met last, you didn't have the threat of the quarterback running the football either, and we saw what Anthony Richardson did in that first matchup earlier in the season last year. So how do you account for that? Just the quarterback, obviously we know JT, what he can do, but the threat of the running game from the quarterback, how do the Texans hope to stop that? Because, Anthony Richardson, we know he can run the football. We know he's got the speed and we know he can do it and take over games running the football, if he can protect himself. So what's your key here for the Houston Texans to try to slow this offense down running wise?
Yeah, you're going to have to ask your linebackers to do a lot. We have a new starter in Azeez Al-Shaair, who we signed from Tennessee. His bread and butter is being a run thumper, coming down here trying to blow up the run. That's what he's here for. Someone, just to put you guys on the radar, Jalen Petrie. He has a new role on this Houston Texans defense, kind of that star nickel role linebacker / corner. He's playing close to the line of scrimmage. And in the preseason, I know it's the preseason, but he's graded high against the run. He's graded high against the pass. I think he's going to have, a huge task going against AR5 and JT. But like I said a couple of minutes ago, if we could put you in those, in those down and distance situations, I like my secondary, against Anthony Richardson's arm.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how the roles are a little bit different with these teams. Like with the Texans, their passing game is so elite, it opens up a lot of things to the run. Whereas for this matchup specifically, the Colts' ability to run the football, both with Anthony Richardson and JT, opens up the pass games. Because, like you said, with those linebackers having to commit to the run a lot more often than they normally would, it definitely opens a lot of things up in the middle of the field for Anthony Richardson. Hope that he can take advantage of that. You already talked about your secondary. We know how good Derek Stingley Jr. is. You talked about those guys. We don't really need to hop into it. One more thing here before we get into record predictions. Special teams wise, how do you feel about your special teams unit, punting, kicking, return guys? How do you feel about them?
So Kaimi Fairbairn, I think he is a very good kicker, top 10 in my opinion. He is already top 10 all time in terms of field goal percentage. I could trust him to kick a 50-plus yarder. Excited for Kaimi Fairbairn this year. We have a new punter in Tommy Townsend, who was an all-pro with the Kansas City Chiefs a couple of years ago. He showed in the preseason game against the Steelers that he can be an absolute weapon. And then our special teams coordinator, Frank Ross, pay attention. This guy's going to be a head coach one day. He is real aggressive, real lockdowns in terms of special teams. And they're one of the reasons why I'm also confident, boys, in this Houston Texans team, because I feel like in all three phases, we have weapons. We have, great guys out there. Special teams, I am excited for.
Awesome. Well, I think, Derek, I know we have one other thing, but we can jump right into score prediction.
Absolutely. But guys, first, again, shout out to BetUS for powering this episode. Again, guys, take advantage of that promo. YouTube 150 for a 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. We'll go ahead and hop into the score predictions here. I'll go first. I'll make this quick so we can get this done and over with here. I do think it'll be a high-scoring game. I will take the Indianapolis Colts with a 28-24 win over the Houston Texans. I got us winning it. We're going to start the season off 1-0. Cody, go ahead with a quick score prediction here.
All right. So I'm going to be controversial here. I'm going to say we're talking so much about these offenses, we're not focusing up on these defenses. All right. We talk all the time how these defenses are going to, Colts fans talk about how the defenses are going to suck. Like, we're going to get roasted. I think the Colts got a little bit more in mind. So I'm going to say 23-20 Indianapolis. I'm going low score here. And that's not popular, I know. Okay. But I got a little bit more faith in this defense than a lot of other people do. A lot of people think this is going to be a bottom unit. I don't see it that way.
All right, Ruben, we got to get it from you, man. Give us your score prediction for this game.
Listen, boys, I think the Houston Texans are going to start off 1-0. I think we're going to walk into Indy. I think we're going to put up 30 and win 30-21. Yes, I think both teams are going to be high scoring, but I just think the Houston Texans offense is going to be too much to keep up for the Indianapolis Colts.
Hey, well, listen, Ruben. Hey, listen, we appreciate you so very much for hopping on this episode with us, man. Got huge love for you, man. I love having it out with you every Tuesday on the AFC South Roundtable, my guy. Thank you so much for hopping on here, man. We appreciate you.
Hey, man, thank you so much. This was a blast. Hope you guys have a healthy season, and we'll see you in the playoffs.
Yes, sir. Love it. Well, hey, guys, listen, that's going to do it for this one. Let us know your thoughts on this. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And as always, go Colts.